Hello and welcome to our today's coffee on consulting, or better to say hot chocolate and consulting. Also, the last time for this year. My name is Friederike Ruch, and I have the honor to host today's coffee and consulting. I hope you all have already your hot chocolate or coffee, and we thought the last event for this year we do a special one and do question and answers from you. So you were able to send in questions, and we have received a couple. We picked out of them 7, which we will now go through with you together. In case there are any additional questions thereafter, or you would like to have a clarification on it, then just drop us an email and we're happy to proceed then and respond to you. Before we start, a couple of housekeeping rules. One is you're all unmute, so if you have any questions or anything while the presentation, then just use the chat box and write down your questions and comments. Also, the slides from today you can download while the presentation is ongoing. Also, you will find the coffee and consulting afterwards on YouTube. As said, we have today a bit of a special one. It's not that we just had picked up a topic and then you were able to answer questions thereafter. We asked you beforehand because we thought the last one would be also a gift from us to you, to whether there might be any clarifications still required for this year, and we wanted to help you with that. One question which we received was, which tasks are subject to authorization notification in Switzerland? We assume that has to do with, or is in regards to, immigration. And for this, there is a definition from the State Secretariat of Migration, which you can look at, and there you find some information already. Basically, as long as it will be viewed as employment, there is a work permit or notification required. As long as it is no employment, not viewed as an employment, and that could be taking part in a workshop but more passive, having or taking part in a classroom training, or going on a fair and checking out clients, negotiating contracts with clients. These are all things which are not viewed as employment. As soon as you are kind of involved in the work process, you basically really do something, then it is viewed as employment. Our advice on it is that if you're not sure what it is, then either you can go and check with the labor market authority responsible for the canton the individual shall work in, or you rather actually request a work permit or a notification for the individual. Also, what I have to say is that the labor market controls the number of them are increasing. That means that the employees who are sent to Switzerland might be checked rather more than less. And with a labor market control, it's usually that the employee will be, or the individual will be asked to come and speak to the labor market inspector. And then the labor market inspector will ask, one of the first questions is, what are you doing here in Switzerland? Are you working? And then most of the times the individuals actually will answer with, yes, we are working, or yes, I am working. And based on that, based on the answer, then it's basically a work permit or a notification had to be in place. Also, what we've seen is that plans change quite quickly. Even the individual might, when he was informing you about his trip to Switzerland, knew for sure he will just kind of maybe take part in a fair or in some company event. In the end, because the colleagues saw that he is coming over to Switzerland, they decided, they used the time and basically asked him to work on a project together with them. And based on that, then the situation is that it then changes from not working or not being employed to actually working with a need of a work permit or a notification. And this is something where sometimes then the HR or the person responsible for the work permits and notifications can't actually request the necessary documents in time. So our advice is really, if you're not sure, go to the Labor Market Authority and ask for clarification, or also make sure that the individual, the employee, knows exactly what the risk is if he's doing something else than actually he had asked or he had told you to do. And then also, if you're unsure, even if the answer from the Labor Market Authority is not really helpful, rather request a work permit instead of not doing any. We also have provided you a couple of samples where you can look at to kind of give you an idea what is basically meant as performing work with the consequence of or with triggering a work permit and what is not. If I pick out just 2 or 3. The first thing, someone is engaged as a speaker at a seminar or workshop. For example, someone is employed in the UK and he's asked now to come over to Switzerland and speak here. Then speaking is performing work. Based on that, a work permit is required. Whereas if he just would attending the workshop or the seminar, so not speaking really, just kind of listening, then it would be viewed as without performing work and no work permit would be required. Meetings, and that I think is there we are asked the most questions about. Basically, if it's just exchanging information, nothing else, really exchanging information like for a project or for whatever, then it is viewed as not performing work and no work permit is required. However, if someone is the manager of a global team and has the feedback, the appraisals with with the employees reporting to him, then it is viewed as work. Or in case they discuss the project and the current pending work or staff meetings, that is performing work. As you see also there, it's the difference between without performing work or with performing work is really very, very narrow. So you need to be sure you understand basically what the individual is doing. In addition, the work permit will be for the full day. So in case someone will kind of attend, as I said earlier, attend a seminar or whatever, and then afterwards work on a project, then that switches to the need of a work permit, and then for the whole day the work permit is required. So I hope with that we have answered that question. And for us, it was something which is quite important, because having or the need of the work permit or the notification is really key for any individuals you send to Switzerland. The next question we received is there a Swiss minimum wage for posted workers in Switzerland, or how can it be calculated? Now, in Switzerland, we do have a minimum salary. Now, for me, it's not really a minimum salary. It's more what we look at is the Swiss equivalent salary. And there you have basically 2 or 3 different calculators which you can use. There's the first one, the Swiss Lohnrechner, which is one, however, that is not used and considered in some of the cantons. It is in Zurich, but like St. Gallen, Geneva, Ticino, Vaud, they use the general one from SECO. So you have to look at the canton where the employee shall work in, what kind of calculator you should use. Then also there is a difference between the type of permit. Basically, if you request a notification only, you can use the lower quartile as the responsible salary or the equivalent salary, whereas for any other permit type, you would need to use the median. You will see on the calculators or on the outcome of the calculation, and that is in all the 2 calculators the same thing. You see there are 3 columns. One is the lower quartile, one is the median, and one is the upper 25%. So you need to concentrate on the lower quartile and on the median. Also on that on the calculation result, you will see lots of different categories. However, you just have to look at the numbers indicated under Swiss nationals, and there as well on the male person. There are 2 lines under each category. The first one is for females, the second one is for males. Always use the male one. It doesn't matter whether the employee is female or male, as we have in theory at least salary equality between women and men. The man one or the male salary should be used. So yes, we do have you have to look at the minimum wage, or better to say at the equivalent salary used for the category of your permit type. Now, if someone is not the whole calendar month in Switzerland, then you don't need to pay the full amount indicated in the calculation. What you can do is you can take the difference between the salary the individual receives from the salary calculated with that calculator, and the difference can then be divided by 21.66 days, which gives you the daily allowance. And that is then what you have to pay the individual for any physical work day spent in Switzerland. So in case someone is maybe arriving Saturday and staying until Wednesday, but Saturday and Sunday he's not working, then you only have to pay for Monday to Wednesday, the days the individual had been working in Switzerland. Also, there one thing from the labor market controls, because they will then kind of review or check on it in case there is any. The labor market control, in principle, does not need to see the difference being paid the very next month. As soon as they see that you have a kind of process or procedure with it, either you say you pay that on a quarterly basis or whatever, they are fine with it. But it is possible that if there's a labor market control check, that they will ask for the receipts, and they would like to see that the payment had been done. So even if the employee says, "Oh, I don't need the money, I'm good with it," as I really need to go and I want to go, I don't need the additional payment. That is actually not an option. You really have to pay. Also, one thing in addition to the Swiss salary requirement for posted workers, it's also that additional cost, like for the accommodation, the travel to Switzerland as well as back, and the travel within Switzerland, as well as lodging, food, have to be paid or reimbursed. So either you pay a lump sum and you can decide by category what you would like to do, or you reimburse the effective cost. Usually what we see is that accommodation and the travel part will be effectively paid or reimbursed, whereas for lodging and food, usually you would pay a lump sum per day, which will cover all of that, but then again, the authority would like to see the receipt. They would like to see the receipt of whether the costs have been effectively paid or reimbursed, as well as whether there is a lump sum. And the lump sum, if you use that, you would actually also pay just for the days the individual had been working. So if it's Saturday until Wednesday he is coming, Saturday, Sunday he's not working, then you just have to pay for Monday to Wednesday. I hope that answers that question. The next question we received was, can you provide some feedback on the situation of a contingent worker in Switzerland from an employment and immigration perspective? What I have seen, or what we have seen, is that it is quite important that you really know what is meant with the setup or the situation in order to precisely then can say what the employment or immigration consequences are. So a contingent worker, at least that is what we understand of it, is someone hired by an organization, usually a freelancer or an independent contractor, self-employed person. So we understand it's not an employee. If it would be an employee, we would have a different term for it. If we say he is a freelancer, independent contractor, or like this, then from an employment perspective, he basically is self-employed. Usually there is no legal entity the individual has in the country of his residence. What we would need is a proof from the Social Security Authority that he had been approved or as a self-employed person, as well as if he is then working in Switzerland, the equivalent A1 form has to be provided. We have seen in practice that there is, it's not quite easy, first of all, to get the equivalent proof of from the Social Security Authority abroad that someone is viewed as self-employed, not like we have that here in Switzerland. However, in the other countries, there is the same kind of discussion or kind of situation that there is a distinction between self-employed or employee. So from an employment perspective, that is not someone who will have in the end an employment contract or so. You would see basically that he is registered under the company name, or the company name is basically his name, and there is a project agreement for the work he has to do or is asked to do in Switzerland. If the individual really falls under the category of self-employed individual, then the Swiss salary level, which we just discussed for employees, is not to be considered. So basically, the individual can earn whatever he wants. The Swiss authorities will not check on it. The salary requirement part is only for employees. There needs to be a project agreement in place. And basically, the project agreement, if it's, for example, from the 1st of January 2024 until the 30th of June 24, then a permit will be only possible to be received for that 6 month period. In case you do want to have a longer permit, then the contract or the agreement needs to be also for a longer period. What we have seen in practice is that individuals who are back home viewed as self-employed, and we have even provided the document of the proof of from the Social Security Authority and the A1. Still, the Labor Market Control Authority has looked at it, and based on the type of work or the kind of work they have performed in Switzerland, they view that as employee. I can give you one example. There is some basically a project in Switzerland where an electrician is required to come over and do some installing of cables and so on. He is a subcontractor, self-employed in his country where he is living or residing. He has the proof, has the A1 based on the self-employed, but in Switzerland, because he is basically not bringing his own material to Switzerland, he is reporting directly to the client. He will be not viewed as self-employed. And based on that, the decision is then, or the consequence out of it is, he is viewed as employee and then therefore has to again look at the Swiss salary level. So in case you would like to use contingent worker in a project here in Switzerland, the most important part is that you actually go to the Labor Market Authority and check with them whether, based on the tasks they need to perform in Switzerland, as well as the situation, whether that is viewed as self-employed or not. And based on that, based on the information, and if there had been no change in the situation itself, then you can be sure also, if there is a check on later on, that you have all the necessary documents and had used the right process. Then we got a question regarding taxes. Do we have to pay withholding tax even if the employee lives abroad and only rarely works in Switzerland? The answer is possibly yes. However, it depends a bit on the situation and the facts. So usually, if the individual is coming from a country or residing in a country where Switzerland has a double tax treaty with, then we have to look at the double tax treaty and basically the 183 days rule. Based on that, there are three factors, or better to say, now four factors to look at. One is someone needs to spend less than 183 days now, either in a calendar year, tax year, or in a 12-month period in Switzerland in order to avoid taxation in Switzerland. If there's also no compensation paid in Switzerland and no cost charged to Switzerland, then you're already quite good. However, there's the fourth thing you need to fulfill as well. That is that the Swiss legal entity should not be viewed as a factual employer, meaning there is no reporting directly to someone in the Swiss legal entity. The individual is not really integrated. There are a couple of other factors as well. So as long as also there is no factual employer or the Swiss entity is not viewed as the factual employer, then there is no taxation in Switzerland. If either of those four points are met, and it is sufficient if just one is met, then basically you end up in, or basically the Swiss legal entity ends up in having to withhold tax at source, and the employee will have to pay taxes here. The tax tariff then, which needs to be used, is based on the personal situation, like married, number of children, and the canton is the one where the Swiss legal entity is situated. Taxed will be only the Swiss working days, nothing else. Now, in case we don't have a tax treaty in place, then basically every day someone is working, there is a withholding tax requirement in Switzerland. Would we suggest for people just coming, not permanently, but coming back and forth or traveling back and forth from Switzerland, try to see that the individuals will have a travel calendar and fill that out so that you can very well determine which days had the person been present in Switzerland and therefore deduct the necessary tax at source. One last point to it about the withholding tax requirement, it is that in case the Swiss legal entity has an obligation to run the withholding tax calculations on a monthly basis, you would actually have to do that also on a monthly basis for any individual where there is a tax withholding requirement based on their situation, even they are not employed in Switzerland. So you have basically to check that with the Swiss tax authorities for the canton you're then filing the application, the withholding tax reports. I hope that answers that question. The next one we received was about whether cross-border commuters from Liechtenstein are subject to a work permit or registration requirement in Switzerland. Now, I don't know which kind of nationality you're looking for, but you will basically have to check on the nationality of the employee as well. So if the individual is Liechtenstein national, is commuting on a daily basis, then no cross-border commuter permit is required nothing needs to be done. If the individual is only commuting once a week, meaning during the week he is staying in Switzerland and then goes back over the weekend to Liechtenstein, then a cross-border permit or a registration here in Switzerland at the commune the individual is living has to be done. For EU and EFTA nationals, either cross-border permit or registration needs to be done, depending on the situation. If they would commute on a weekly basis at least, then cross-border permit can be applied for. Otherwise, it's they have to just take up residency in Switzerland. And if the individual is a non-EU EFTA national, then basically a cross-border permit has to be requested, and there is a need then that a daily commuting takes place. Or otherwise, the individual has then just to move to Switzerland. Now, because someone who has a residence permit in Liechtenstein and they don't want to lose it, as well as they don't know whether they can receive it later on, maybe the tendency would be to request then the cross-border permit. I hope that that answers this question as well. The next question we received was, the employee wants to work abroad for a while. Do we have to take anything into account? Now, the question is very wide and there is lots to say to it. I just would like to kind of point out a couple of things where you have to be careful, but the basic answer is yes, you have to take a lot of into account if you want to have people working abroad. Now, the thing is as well, I assumed now working abroad means like the workation or just remotely working in another country and not really assignments. But depending on what it is, you should think about writing down at least the major points for that type or that setup and put that as a kind of a guideline with all the factors there are, like really what has to be done from a social security point of view, tax point of view, payroll, insurance coverage, salary requirements, legal aspects. So everything around that working abroad needs to be somewhere at least written down. That does not need to be a guideline of 40 pages. We usually advise if someone starts, then just try to put it down in 3 to 5 pages, at least the things you really would like to do and you know needs to be done. And then you can later on, with the experience you will get with using that setup, you will later on be able to actually change or adjust the guideline. You will have to think about whether you just want to do an addendum to the employment contract, or maybe also a new employment contract is required for someone working abroad. If it's for someone been working in Switzerland and now just wants to do a workation for a while, then maybe an addendum is sufficient. So yeah, we'll have to check what needs to be done from an employment contract perspective in order to make sure that both parties are really know exactly what the situation is. If someone works abroad, then also always the mandatory legal requirements have to be checked and have to be implemented. Like we earlier said, if someone is posted to Switzerland, that there is the Swiss equivalent salary to be looked at. If someone is now going from Switzerland abroad, same thing. You will have to look at salary requirements, usually holidays, bank holidays, work hours, things like that. And there are a couple of others which you have to look at, but those are the major ones where there is also usually a difference between Switzerland and the other countries. Minimum salary requirements have to be looked at because also the other countries are taking care that there is no salary dumping in their country, and therefore they would like to make sure that the employees are protected. Immigration is one of the key things as well, because as long as the individual is not entitled to work or authorized to work, he cannot work from wherever that is. Also not just for one day. So you will have to check whether based on the individual's nationality, meaning passport, he might be able to work, or with the current permit he has, or whether he has any other type of permit which authorizes him to work in that country. If not, then look at whether you can request a work permit. Sometimes, if you don't have a legal entity in that country, that might not be possible, because usually you need to have a sponsor in that country in order to get a work permit. Social security is quite important, depending also then on the period somebody wants to work abroad. The longer someone wants to work abroad, the more you should check and make sure the social security is correctly in place. Also check on the insurance coverage, that the coverage which is indicated in the contract is really what effectively also happens, and that there is no discrepancy between both. We also advise, usually if someone goes on those workation trips, that they ask, and there the individuals ask themselves for additional health insurance coverage, just because the Swiss one is good, but sometimes it is not sufficient, depending a bit also on the country. Income tax is there again, depending a bit on how long someone wants to work abroad. There might not be any income taxation in the country of destination, but the individual might remain tax liable in the original country. But that depends a bit on the situation. Therefore, that needs to be checked at least, as well as the checking should be about whether the Swiss employer has any kind of withholding obligations in the other country. There are, for example, in the US, a couple of states where there is a withholding obligation from day one, even there is no legal entity in Switzerland, in the US, depending on the nature of work. Therefore, check on that and check whether then there is also some payroll requirements. If the question was linked to workation, then which is usually just for in most companies at least, it's used for maximum 30 days, then usually also you would kind of say that only people can go on vacation or can go in countries and work as vacation if they are entitled from their own nationality or from their own permits or visas to work there. And that a second condition is usually that it is a social security treaty country, meaning there is a social security treaty in place. Therefore, the individual can definitely remain in the home system while working there, and there is no additional social security charges or anything involved. I hope that answers this question as well. And as said, that is just a quick overview on it. There's lots of other stuff you have to look at and think about it, but I think we picked the most important legal ones. Then we had a question about, and that is also the last question we received. One of our employees is assigned from Switzerland to Argentina to work for 8 months. Can he be exempted from Social Security in Argentina? We do not have a Social Security treaty with Argentina, and therefore he cannot be exempted from Social Security in Argentina. So you will in any case have to check on the coverage or on the requirements in Argentina in that situation. It is possible that there is no additional contributions to be paid. If that's the case, then that is perfect. If there are additional costs involved in or contributions to be paid in Argentina, you will have to think about who will pay them, meaning who will pay the additional employee contributions. Shall the employee pay them, or rather would you as an employer take them over instead of that the employee has to pay it? Because what you would do in those scenarios is that you would like to keep the employee whenever possible in the Swiss social security system. Now, even if there is no bilateral agreement, there is the possibility to voluntarily remain in the Swiss social security system. However, you can only do that if you have the condition met of the previous 5 years of insurance coverage in Switzerland. If that condition is met, then basically you can request the continuation of voluntary social security through ALPS, and then the individual will be in all these social security branches he is currently paying contribution to, he can remain. So there's no change for him. He just has to keep the Swiss health insurance. Even the Swiss health insurance might not help him at all in Argentina, but he has to keep it in order to keep him in the Swiss social security system. There will be the requirement of an additional international health insurance on top of it. There, usually the employer will pay that, but to answer the question, he cannot be exempted from Social Security in Argentina unless, based on Argentina law, there is no requirement to pay any Social Security contributions. And there are a couple of countries where sometimes based on the period someone is working in the country or based on the permit type someone has, the individual will not have to pay contributions and is exempted. So that needs to be checked then in Argentina. I hope that we have answered all the questions comprehensively and you have the information you need. As said, if you still have questions to it or anybody else has maybe a similar question and would like to check on it, just drop us an email and we're happy to answer that, or just call us. It is our last time for this year, and I just would like to give you a quick outlook before I close that event. Next year, again, we will have a couple of webinars. Here you will find the webinars from 24. We will start on the 30th of January with working in more than one country and with the risk of social security liability. And we also will have two seminars next year, and the first one is on the 13th of March about cross-border and international weekly commuters. We also will continue with our coffee and consulting events, and there you will get an invitation for the January one through the usual medias. I then can only wish you a very nice holiday season. First of all, a couple of nice days still to Christmas, hopefully not too hectic. And then nice Christmas day, nice holiday season, and everything you wish, a wonderful time. And then I hope to see you all next year again. Thank you very much for your attention today.